Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be doing a narrated range test of my mini Talon. I didn't really build this plane with efficiency in mind, as you can tell by my fairly bulky camera setup at the front, but I value the ability to pan and the high quality stabilised footage from the Osmo over efficiency. On this plane I've got Dragon Link UHF 433 MHz on the left wing, and on the right wing I have a 1.3 GHz video transmitter with the VAS Pepperbox on my ground station. So therefore I'm going to rule out the control link or the video link as being the limiting factors on my range here, and it's actually going to be more to do with the battery. The battery I always run on my mini Talon is a 5 amp 4 cell LiPo. It's very rare these days that I try and fly efficiently, so I think with this LiPo in this plane I've been getting around 15-20 minute flight times. In this flight I'll also be trying out my downward facing camera for the first time. I've added a video switcher so I can flip between this one and my Fox here at the front at any point. Believe it or not, my mini Talon when flying efficiently still can't match the efficiency of my Z-Con even when I'm racing that around. Okay, so I'm at my favourite local flying spot here. It's quite windy and the wind direction is coming from those mountains in the distance, so that's the direction we're going to fly. I'm using the MyFlyDream autopilot and I'm just about to use launch mode to get this in the air. For anyone that's seen my recent mini Talon video, you'll see just on the right hand side there the lake that I flew to. I think that's around 5 or 6 kilometers away. On the right hand side of my OSD you'll see my altitude in meters. We're going to hit 94 at the end of this launch, and that is the maximum altitude I'm going to reach in this entire flight. In fact, I will drop the altitude down quite a bit shortly. So I'm in stabilised mode at the moment, but I'm about to flick it into alt mode, which on the MyFlyDream is a kind of cruise control. It will allow the plane to automatically maintain its heading and also its altitude and control the throttle. Here it displays the heading it's trying to achieve, and the actual heading is at the top in the middle there. Also, this is the altitude it's trying to achieve, and the actual altitude is here. As you can see, I'm testing out my downward facing camera here for the first time. It's quite a cool view, but it also makes me realise how much the Predator at the front of the plane boosts the saturation on the colour. The Predator 4 is the FPV camera I'm using at the moment. It's the one at the front of the plane with the view that you're seeing right now. This is currently my favourite FPV camera and I have it on most of my models now. So my plan for this flight is just to head towards this valley in the distance here and see how far we're going to make it. I know I can use over half of my battery because the wind will help me on the way back, but I don't want to push it too far and lose the model. So I'll just give you a really quick rundown of some items on the OSD for anyone who's not familiar with the MyFlyDream. On the left here we have the airspeed and the ground speed just below it. In the bottom left we have all the battery information, the voltage, the amps that we're drawing, and the number of milliamps used so far. In the bottom middle we have the distance from home in meters. In the top left corner above the mode we have the flight time. To the right of this we have a trip distance, so it's showing how many kilometers we've covered so far in this flight. On the right hand side we have the number of satellites, and just below that is my RSSI on my Dragon Link receiver. So that this video doesn't go on too long, I'm going to fast forward some parts of it. So this really is a great location for this kind of flight. It's not populated, I'm mostly flying over trees and fields, and I'm able to keep a real nice low altitude here of around 40 to 50 meters. To top it off, it's also just a really nice scenic area with things like the river, the lakes, the mountains. So after passing the 5.5 kilometer mark, we're kind of well into the valley here in between the mountains. And as expected in this kind of terrain, I'm noticing the wind is quite gusty and really starting to knock the plane about. I couldn't tell at the time because I didn't have audio and I wasn't always watching the amps, but I can see now that my autopilot was also struggling to keep the right airspeed, as the amps are kind of going anywhere in between 3 amps and 20. This isn't exactly going to be good for my efficiency. Having a pan servo like this definitely makes these flights a lot more enjoyable. Seeing that wingtip bouncing around like this also makes you realise how good the stabilisation is on this HD camera. Okay, so making use of that downward facing camera again. In fact, while we're just here cruising along, I'll show you a clip from another flight, which was just after this one, where I decided to fly as close to some trees as possible while using the downward facing camera, and I don't think I'll be getting any closer than that. So at this point in the flight, I've reached 7.3 kilometers from home, and I've used over half my battery. I've used 2030 milliamps so far. On board I have 5000 milliamps, but I stick to the rule of only using 80% of that, and therefore I have 4000 usable milliamps. So I know I'm going against the wind and I won't need half of my battery to get home. So at this point it's just a bit of a judgment call. How far do I go? How much do I push it? Do I risk losing this plane? I'm going to keep going a bit further and see how far I can make it before I feel like I need to turn around. At this point I was thinking I've used 2400, I've only got 1600 to make it home. Probably best to turn around at this point rather than risking this model on its first range test. So the maximum distance I managed to achieve from home on this flight was 8,758 meters. Now it's time to see if my 1550 milliamps are enough to get me all the way back home. First impressions after turning around, it looks pretty good. My ground speed is way higher than it was before, way higher than my airspeed, and I'm pulling less than 5 amps. As expected with this setup, I've had a solid video length the entire flight, so I'm going to push it a little bit harder and just get nice and close to these trees. So I know that in the mini Talon world, 8.7 kilometers is really nothing to shout about. It's fairly short range for this airframe. I know that I could really increase the efficiency of this if I wanted to by changing the camera setup and also changing the battery. But as I said, I'm not really interested in increasing the efficiency or duration of my flights. But I have seen that this airframe is really capable. In fact, I watched a video the other day where a guy used one of these to cover 300 kilometers in one flight, and his max distance from home was 123 kilometers. Now I don't think he had a control link and a video link for the entire flight. I think it was autonomous, but still it just gives you a good idea of the capabilities of the mini Talon. Okay, so I'm about to return home and you can see me on the horizon there. So in this flight we used 3,500 milliamps before we got home, so I definitely could have made it further. I'd say I easily could have pushed it to the 10 kilometer mark, but it's one of those things you just don't know at the time. So I used 2,400 milliamps to get out to my furthest point from home, and then I only used 1,100 to return thanks to the wind. So I'm just going to turn around here now and come in for a nice smooth landing, and we'll take a quick look at the final flight stats. Okay, so we had a flight time of just under 20 minutes and we covered a total of 18.7 kilometers. My efficiency is what I wanted to look at, and that's 198 milliamps per kilometer, which is actually pretty bad. On my flight to the lake, I think my efficiency was 170-ish milliamps per kilometer. So my guess is that the strong winds and when the plane was struggling to maintain its airspeed and was using high amps is probably why my efficiency is not so great. So there are no amazing achievements in this flight, but I hope you enjoyed it or learned something. If you did, please give it a like. If not, feel free to give it a thumbs down and let me know why. Thanks for watching. Bye.